Anneka Rice, hello.
Hello.
I shouldn't really be more excited with some guests than others, but I'm very excited at the fact you're here today.
I know you say that, Trevor.
No, I don't.
Very nice.
So when I was younger and I'd been bad, apparently the ultimate punishment that my parents laid on was to take the TV out of my room so I couldn't see Treasure Hunt.
The TV in your room, that's so louche. God.
Well, it's not when you've been bad and it was taken out. So
Yeah.
on quite a few occasions, I was banned from seeing you on
Steve.
Treasure Hunt.
Oh, God, I'm still in shock at having a TV in your room. In the Treasure Hunt days, lots of people didn't even have a bloody TV, let alone one in their room.
I think it was a black and white TV, but it was a TV.
It still worked.
So this list of songs,
Yeah.
I said to you, can you come up with 10? And you went, okay, I'll get to it. How difficult was it?
Well, the thing was, I was working non-stop during the 80s. I was so busy, it was insane. So I didn't do what most people of my age might have been doing, which is going out clubbing, just sort of hanging around. So most of the songs I picked relate to work and extraordinary threads that I can sort of almost chart their sort of journey, sometimes right from my childhood to the present day. They're all connected.
Amazing.
Which is rather nice. So they're not just a great song that I might have just played to myself in my bedroom if I didn't have the TV on. They have quite profound stories and resonances. So this
should be a really easy week for me. I'm just going to let you talk. So the first song on your list, I mean, this is great actually, Pink Floyd. I don't think anybody's suggested this one so far.
Really?
Honestly.
I mean, it's quite an obvious Pink Floyd one, but at the time it came out, I was actually working in Hong Kong. As I was a very young journalist. I'd done a 2-year training course at the BBC where I'd worked in the World Service, and all my vision went out to the Far East because that's the area I was working in. So as soon as I could, I bought a one-way ticket and went to work in Hong Kong.
And you were 19 years old,
so I'm very young, and working as a journalist for the local news station out there, and I get the job of the newsreader when the newsreader is taken ill, and I'm working as a sub-editor at the time in the newsroom, preparing the scripts for everyone else, staying up all night writing the scripts for everyone else, doing all the slog, as you say, very young, didn't know a soul there, just my life was just work. And the newsreader was ill. I said, that can't be that hard. Yeah, I'll have a go at that. Yeah, I've done stuff like that at the BBC, though obviously I patently hadn't. And I get this job, and why Pink Floyd, it reminds me of that period. I was in such a fluster to get to the news studio that very first day because I'd never done this before, and I was pretending I had. I didn't even know how to work the auto cue. And I actually was in a car, I'm very flustered, racing to get to the news studio, and I ran someone over. And it was a really busy area of Hung Hum, hundreds and hundreds of people teeming all over the streets and pavements. And luckily, it was so busy I could barely sort of move the car forward, and this poor guy just sort of, I found out later actually he wasn't hurt at all, and he was very off his head with God knows what. And luckily the police were there.
Oh my goodness.
The police were there as it happened, and they could see that it just wasn't my fault. He just walked straight onto my car bonnet, more or less. So very kindly they took me to the first newscast I did in front of the nation in a police car with a siren going. So it was quite flustering, but at the time Pink Floyd was playing in my car. So whenever I hear Pink Floyd, I think of that very tense first broadcast, which was added, the tenseness, there was another layer because Spike Milligan, who was being interviewed for something else in the studio at the time, decided to crawl into the studio while I was on air and sit under my feet.
What a first shift.
Under the desk, rather, not under my feet.
Right.
Though, frankly, by the end of it, I wanted him under my feet. So I had Spike Milligan sitting like a little gnome under my news desk. I'm still shaking from my accident, and that's when I became a television presenter. And then years later, very hilariously, when I started doing Treasure Hunt, in the first series, the person who was the Wincy Willis figure,
yes,
you'll remember, who moved the helicopter around and the maps, the very first series, it was someone called Nettie Mason, and I went round to her house for coffee after the first series, and I'm sitting there with a nice pink Floyd tour mug and talking to her about life and what's it like. And I then say, what does your husband do? And she says, oh, he works in a band. Anyway, it's Nick Mason from Pink Floyd.
Wow.
So talk about an arc.
Isn't that weird?
And they've become great friends. And so this song reminds me of eccentricity in my life, which there is a lot of.
Brilliant. So you picked The Cars and Drive, your next song. Now, it's interesting, a moment ago we spoke about Live Aid.
Yeah.
This song always takes me back, you know, to that. I mean, were you there at Live Aid?
No, I was actually in the middle of filming Treasure Hunt.
Oh.
And we'd just finished filming a treasure hunt in Oxford, and we were all driving back and had the car on, and we heard this thing happening, this live extravaganza. And I remember thinking, I remember the moment, I remember the bit of the A40 I was on and thinking, this is a bit of history. It felt utterly profound because quite a little time before that, we'd had Michael Burke's extraordinary broadcast when he talked about the Ethiopian famine, which, you know, remains this utterly watershed moment in crisis reporting. It was so utterly distressing. And Bob Geldof viewed the news that day and thought, instead of just talking about it in the pub, I'm going to do something about it. And this Live Aid extravaganza in July 1985 was possibly the most exciting thing, you know, that I've ever...
Well, the world hadn't seen anything of that scale.
Never seen anything. It was like no other musical event or since, and it just attempted to make a difference. And, you know, the greatest selection of musical artists you could imagine in one event. And the Cars had brought out this song, Drive, and a little video was made with that as this audio to it, of this pictures of the famine. And it's so distressing. I mean, last night before I came to see you today, I watched it again. I was blubbing like a baby. It just brought back all those feelings. But for me, the whole thing was utterly profound, and it was totally the inspiration, that moment, for the Challenge Anaka series I went on to do.
Really?
Yep, because I just thought that's a community of people coming together to do something and to shine a spotlight on a problem and just all get together and do something about it. And so for many reasons this song is very profound.
Anneka Rice is with me. Anneka, first question about Kate Bush, Running Up That Hill, which is your next song. How do you feel? How did it make you feel in the last kind of 12 months when we've seen our girl back at the top of the charts?
Well, Kate Bush, Madonna and I are more or less all the same age. So we've all gone our different ways. I'd say Kate Bush and I have sort of sailed a sort of close, you know, sort of more normal course. Madonna I don't even recognise anymore, but I kind of love her because, as I say, she's a utter contemporary of mine.
Yeah.
So I look and say, good for you, girl, whatever you're doing, good for you. But Running Up That Hill was just a very profound song, I think, for women and young girls at that time. And, you know, I was a young girl at that time, and I was putting together TV formats and programmes. I talked about the challenge format idea that came out of Live Aid. And Kate Bush, you know, I just felt, you know, we were all sort of trying to blaze a trail in a world that was very much led by men. I mean, at the time in Telly, women were either just behind a news desk or they were draped over a car in a pink bikini,
right,
selling a motor car. You know, that was the option.
So the question I've got for you then is, so you were in Hong Kong, you were a journalist, you were working for the BBC, and then seemingly next thing you were on Treasure Hunt.
That was a swerve.
And Treasure Hunt is still one of Channel 4's highest rating shows. I mean, I loved it. It spoke to me every week. In my head, as an 8-year-old, I thought that they shut down the skies and Anaka had control. And I thought it was a live TV show, but I think most people had never seen anything like Treasure Hunt.
No, and it just was utterly inspired of Channel 4 to put a woman in that role, because it's a French format, and the French guy who does it is this guy, he actually got killed while he was filming. A guy called Philippe Dieuleveux, and he, you know, very butch macho man jumping out of planes, and they just went with me. And at the time I was a journalist.
Wow.
And but I was very fit. I was sort of running a marathon, and so they just took a swerve and went for me. And brilliant because I think why it had such an impact, that programme, boy did it change my life overnight. I think I was on the front page of every single newspaper for the next sort of 30 years, more or less. Because what it did is it just put a woman in the centre of the action, in control, calling the shots. And it just sounds nothing now because we have lots of role models like that.
But you were the first.
And well, it was the first reality programme where you didn't know what was going to happen. If someone said to me, abseil down the Shard, I went, yeah, just putting on a harness. We landed on submarines.
You never seemed fazed at all.
I didn't, because it was live and I just caught up in the adrenaline of the moment, and I love a bit of jeopardy.
Yeah.
I thrive on jeopardy. So it was actually, as it turned out, a perfect show for me to do, and my time in Hong Kong had prepared me for it, in that I was always up against jeopardy when I was in Hong Kong, but Kate Bush and treasure hunt starting and seeing powerful women doing something, I think it all felt very tied up and joined up to me.
Anneka Rice is here. We're doing My 80s playlist. Are you enjoying this so far?
I'm loving it. It's like sort of Desert Island Disc.
Yeah, in an 80s way.
In the 80s way.
Now, Gloria Gaynor, this my favourite fact about this song, you must know about this, that it was originally a B-side. And apparently the record company were like, this song's amazing.
Yeah.
It is an anthem of our time, of a generation. Why have you picked this?
I've picked this because the next series I went on to do after Treasure Hunt was called Challenge Anaka, which was the format I kind of devised having seen Live Aid, and also I went to see a theatre company called Chicken Shed, and this is an inclusive theatre company where there's kids of all backgrounds and disabilities, and they're all on stage together putting on a production. So you might have a Down syndrome kid or a kid in a wheelchair, blind kid, someone with autism, but there's able-bodied kids around them and adults, and everyone just makes this thing happen. So I decided that was the kernel.
So did you go to the BBC and say, I've got this idea?
I wrote it out, went to the BBC, said to Michael Grade, who was in charge then, Michael, I'd love you to back this. This is what I want to do. And he was brilliant. He just looked at me. He knew Treasure Hunt, obviously. So I was known for sort of unusual programming. And this was a huge risk, this programme, because
and it was BBC One, wasn't it? Saturday night, absolute prime time.
And it tackled so many very thoughtful, difficult problems. Romanian orphanages, or teenage pregnancy or disability, the Paralympics, we really, deafness, we covered a lot of different subjects in the projects we took on, and made it, we presented it in a very fun way. There was Dave the Sound Man, and there was a buggy. So it sat at 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening before Noel's house party and Mr. Blobby. And often very harrowing scenes. But it was cleverly edited to make it absolutely work for that audience. But as a result of Kate Bush and running up that hill, all the production team were women. I created this fantastic female sort of powerhouse, and the production team once a year would go into a booth and in a sort of karaoke booth and record I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor and send it to me, because it just did feel like we were up against the most. We went to Croatia once to do a project post the war there, and we were filming in this area called Patkratz. And we had snipers trained on us the whole time. We were meant to be protected by the United Nations, but none of us knew whether we'd get out alive, and we all wrote notes home to our families and things. So, and we went to Malawi and worked on a refugee camp there. So a lot of the subjects were gritty, but they were also quite dangerous. Yeah. So when we'd got through over 60 projects, when the series finally ended, we all just felt we had somehow survived something quite extraordinary. And what a lovely thing in a career to be able to have been part of that. You know, we're all still in touch.
If there's one episode, because lots of them are on YouTube, is there one that you will always remember? The one that stands out more than the rest?
Well, some are just great fun and very mad. Like, you know, we did this tape of children's songs and got George Martin from the Beatles to produce it, which I'll come to later. But others were utterly harrowing, like going out to Romania and working on an orphanage. Just after Ceausescu opened up Romania, and there were just, it was like a concentration camp. There were just 600 or so children, all with shaved heads, rocking, and you know, that was very harrowing. But it went on. You know, the volunteers are still out there to this day. That's
amazing.
And when the Ukraine war started and refugees from Ukraine were coming over the border, our orphans, who are now young adults and living in all these halfway houses that our charity we set up has built for them, they gave up their beds to the Ukrainian refugees. So I just felt that was such a humanitarian arc of 35 years, that those orphans, now adults, were giving up their beds to the next group of people.
Cycle of life,
needing aid and help and support. Amazing. So that was a moment.
Amazing. I'm going to try and get through the next. They're going to kick me out just shortly after one. So let's try and do 2 minutes for the next. We'll try and get as many done as we can.
Yeah.
Anneka Rice is here. We're doing my 80s playlist. I think this might be the most requested Prince song. Everyone has a different reason why they love it, why they want it. What's yours?
Mine is, I love Prince anyway, but when we were doing a challenge once, when I was doing the challenge with George Martin, you know, the fifth Beatle, who'd agreed to produce this album of children's songs for me, and we needed lots of artists to record things like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and, you know, Puff the Magic Dragon and whatever. And so I drove my buggy into Earl's Court where Prince was on stage, and they let me through, and I get right up to the sort of door where he's on stage. We can hear Purple Rain singing and I'm there with Dave the soundman and Martin the cameraman, and we're going, can we just have a quick word with Prince? We just want to see if he wouldn't mind singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or something. We can record it really quickly. You know, it's just very surreal, and obviously we got thrown out. But,
did you get to speak to him? Did you get to ask him?
He's on stage in front of thousands and thousands of people, so it was very, very silly.
How were you feeling at that moment? Was there a bit of you that thought he might?
It was a bit of, well, no, because the thing is, all his crew and everyone were very American. All his bouncers, they had no idea who we are. So the people at the main gate of Earl's Court went, "Hello, Anaka, come on in," because everyone was always so friendly to me. And once I got into the sort of inner layers of the American security detail, they just literally looked
with
at
their
us
snipers
and thought we were mad and get that mad woman out of here.
Anneka, this is a special moment. This takes me all the way back to being 6 or 7, Cub Camp, all the kids singing along to this song. You've gone for Spitting Image. Now, first question I've got to ask you, Spitting Image was massive. Were you ever portrayed in Spitting Image?
I was a puppet.
You were, weren't you?
I gave birth on it. I was always on television in those days, being taken off either by a comedian or someone. I could barely walk past the sitting room without hearing Bobby Davreb running around in a jumpsuit pretending to be me. And they didn't tell me I was about to be on. And again, I was walking past the sitting room and I suddenly see my Spitting Image puppet on telly with Kenneth Kendall, and I'm having a baby. I'm pregnant at the time in real life.
Right.
But on Spitting Image, I'm having the baby, and it becomes this treasure hunt to get this baby out of me running along the street looking for the hospital. And then eventually I'm in hospital, and Kenneth meanwhile is directing operations and going, "How's it going, Annie? Any sign of the baby?" And I'm going, "I think it's coming, Kenneth." And then the baby, the film crew come out. I give birth to the film crew, and Kenneth sort of going, "How are you feeling, Anneka's baby?" And it's just mad.
How did you feel about seeing your puppet? Because some of them were very...
Oh no, mine is mad.
Edge,
it's on YouTube. It's worth looking at. It's very funny. My kids literally collapsed with laughter when they saw it, because obviously it was one of them being born.
Yeah.
But the madness of it brings me to that thing of the novelty song, which when I was a child and I used to listen to Ed Stewart on telly, on the radio rather, on the wireless, doing his family favourites. I loved all those songs, and I used to wait all morning for Sparker's Magic Piano or Puff the Magic Dragon.
And you do this show now, don't you?
And I now, so that's another lovely thread. So all these years later, I have now taken over from Ed Stewart, and on Christmas morning on Radio 2 I present that very show.
And that's a staple, isn't it, every year?
Yeah, and it's such a lovely thing, such a privilege to share everyone's Christmas morning with them. So I have to say, my ears, the novelty song has been part of my life.
And is this your favourite, this one?
No, we've never played this
Have you not?
on Radio 2 Christmas morning, but who knows?
Got to.
I mean, it's all the wombles, and I mean, it is a joy. It is a joy.